Welcome, members of the press. I'm meeting for the first time tonight, as well as my cherished friends, family members, and colleagues. Thank you for coming to Val-Kill on such short notice to hear about my victory at the United Nations. Oh, Val-Kill is so precious to me. Many of you have helped to give me the strength to meet this purpose and to help with this victory from today. So I think I'll sit for a moment. I hope you enjoyed dinner. As I said, Marge prepared an unbelievable dinner and served it buffet style, and informality is the custom here at Val-Kill, and I hope that you don't mind that I'm still wearing my apron because I'm short on help, and I helped Marge in the kitchen, and I will be helping serving dessert. So I hope you don't mind about the informality. I'm very happy to tell you that from this day forth, December 10th is now being celebrated in many countries as Human Rights Day. Our hopes is that the observance will be spread to all countries, because the more the day is celebrated around the world, the more people will understand what human rights are. Human rights must be applied to all human beings, regardless of race and creed and color, and they are applied by meaning that people around the world, and there's understanding. During my first time in Washington as First Lady, I met a lot of you. Some of you I didn't meet, but I recognize some of you. I haven't seen you since, I think it was 1945 when I left the White House, when my dear Franklin died and President Truman moved in. And I came here to Val-Kill. And here I've stayed, and it's now 1948. I can't believe I've been here for 3 years. When I first came, now I want to just say, I see on your faces, especially the people I know, that you're worried that I didn't do okay here, that I didn't do all right. But I want to tell you that I came here from Washington. I packed up just a few mementos, photos, and some things I got from, countless people who came to the White House, and some of my travels, because you know my nickname is Eleanor Everywhere. And I've been everywhere. Do you know that 1 year I traveled 40,000 miles? And it was breaking news, you reporters know, when I was actually in the White House. Made front page news when I actually was home. Up here in Hyde Park, farmland, beautiful walks in the woods. That didn't last very long. I became very unsatisfied. And I knew that I would have to really honestly reflect on what I would have to do. So soon after I returned, I found myself unsatisfied and hadn't realized how much it meant to me to promote the causes that I was interested in, like world peace and women's rights, universal education, and of course, above all, personal fulfillment. I began honestly reflecting on the influence I had as First Lady and how much I actually missed my role to work on that behalf. So I want to just say that I think I'm a good deal like my Uncle Theodore. Some of them called him Teddy, because he never sat still either. And I think that I could not at any age be content just sitting by the fireplace and reading books. I mean, I do like to read books. I have a whole bookcase full of books in the next room where you had drinks. Did you enjoy cocktails? In the second living room, that was my dear Tommy Malvina, my secretary's apartment. When she left, I turned it into my second living room where I have drinks, and of course my office is in there. So, where was I? Well, in any event, I couldn't sit by the fireplace and just simply look on. I'm going to sit for a moment, do you mind? Because I've been tired helping Marge. Oh, so I said to myself, do not stop thinking about life as an adventure. You have no security unless you can live bravely, excitedly, imaginatively. Life was meant to be lived and curiosity kept alive. No one must ever, for whatever reason, turn their back on life. Do you think that would make a good quote? Should I repeat it for the newspaper reporters? Well, in 1946, most of you probably know this, but for those who don't, in 1946, President Truman asked me to travel to Europe to be on the committee to form the first United Nations. Well, I figured that was probably right up my alley. Franklin, as you know, cherished the gift of freedom. He aptly expressed his commitment to this role of life on the four freedoms. In this vein, as the dreadful war ended, you know what war I'm talking about. One of Franklin's most vivid dreams was to bring together all the nations who were involved so that it would ensure that a war like this would never happen again. So, as you're well aware, Franklin never lived to see this happen. And I guess his inability to attend was the divine intervention that changed my life. Despite resistance from many, I, Eleanor Roosevelt, went to London. The rest, they say, is history. You must do the thing you think you cannot do, I told myself. I told myself as I proceeded to the best I could do at the first meeting in London.
Mrs. Roosevelt, so happy to be here tonight. Thank you for having us. When you first arrived in London and traveled around a bit, what did you witness of what was left from the war in Europe?
Oh, while I was there, I witnessed the devastation as a result of the war in Europe. Words cannot describe the emotion I felt. When will our consciences ever grow so tender that we will work to prevent misery instead of avenging it? Anyone else? Question? Yes, ma'am. What newspaper are you from?
I'm from out of town in Massachusetts.
Oh, I've spent time in Massachusetts. Yes, you know that
Fairhaven.
Oh, yes, I've been to Fairhaven where my mother-in-law was born.
Correct.
And I have a few other friends from Massachusetts, as you probably know.
Bedford, so
Oh, yes, I love Fairhaven. It's so beautiful to be by the water.
yes. Oh, anyway, I'm sorry to go off the track here.
Oh, I always go off the track, you know that.
I do, yes. What was it like to be the first woman at the meeting?
I would love to answer that question. Anything about being the first woman or being a woman delights me to answer. Oh, there was clearly resistance, as you could well imagine, when I arrived. Now, I think I recognize you. I'm a newswoman myself, and I think I might have met you at one of the women's press conferences.
I think you're right. I forget which one right now.
Maybe it was in Massachusetts.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Oh, well, there was clearly resistance when I arrived. I thought to myself, as the first woman, I must show I am equal or better than anyone. I would have to do all my homework and be prepared. I'm not usually one to boast, for those of you who know me. But I have performed well, and in good humor, as I was asked to head one of the United Nations' most sensitive committees, developing the International Bill of Rights, as we like to think of the United States. A document that would enshrine Franklin's four freedoms. The document would reaffirm faith in the dignity of the human person and equal rights for men and women. Those who know me well know I've been working on this for decades. Is that sufficient?
Yes, very. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, and do I know you, or are you a new reporter?
From the Washington Post, but I had to come and see you tonight.
I'm so happy you came all the way to Hyde Park. Where are you staying, my dear?
Oh, a little house down the street from you.
My telephone is always ringing. Why would that be? Even on an evening when I'm trying to be busy with company. Who would call me? Everyone I know is here. I don't know. I'm going to smash that telephone or will you please tell the housekeeper to just pull the cord out of the wall? I'm sorry. So you are retired from the Washington Post. Oh, where are you staying, my dear? Because I have 20 rooms.
I'm staying down the road, but I'd love to stay here.
I would be happy to have Marge help me. You are the cook, but yeah. I think the housekeeper left.
I left a suitcase in my car just in case.
Oh, I'm so happy. Oh, and I think you are the person who was kind enough to bring some scones with you. Since you know I returned from London and I love them. What is your question?
Well, what is the most challenging part of heading the committee to create the Universal Declaration of Human Rights?
I was afraid someone was going to ask this one. I prepared the answer. Members of the committee included representatives from Lebanon, France, India, China, Canada, and the Soviet Union. The reason I wrote it down is because I am a mere 62, and I didn't want to forget anyone. Now, after dessert, I'm going to take you on a tour of the house for those who haven't been here. And I have photos of some of these people who are on the committee. Very interesting fellow. Coming from countries with fundamental differences in their political and economic systems, they often disagreed about which rights should be included and which are most important. I hope I'm not offending anyone in the audience if you are from one of these countries, because I try to keep an open mind. I overheard one of the committee members, at these times when I used my experience working with a diverse group of people, I overheard one of the committee members say the following about me. Eleanor's sheer force of personality contributed greatly to the successful outcome. He told his fellow committee member that I worked very hard, but had a good combination of warmth, charm, and humor, and that I was doggedly persistent. I can't imagine where he got that comment from. Any other questions? I think I could take one or two more. Yes?
When will the information about the final meeting appear in your My Day column?
Oh, as you know, I have been busy at work on the My Day column for decades, and this is no exception. Countless newspapers are waiting to spread the news of the victory to millions of Americans. On my way back from Paris, I began working on writing the column. I hope it will appear nationwide in a couple of days. In addition, I have been asked to appear on several radio broadcasts around the country. You'll have to wait. I think it'll be out, well, today's June 12th, and I came back on the 11th from Paris, from the UN, I think maybe by the end of the week. Any other questions? Oh, all right, then I'm going to ask you. Margie, you ready? I don't see your apron on.
We'll be ready.
I know we have a combination of informality and formality in this house, and I see you've brought your daughter along to help out with the refreshments.
I did.
Would you like to put an apron on, my dear?
Sure, absolutely.
So, please take a few moments for coffee and tea. I don't claim to be an expert or scholar on Eleanor. I don't think anyone can make that claim. And interestingly, when I was doing the talk, I had the sentence in, not even Franklin. My mother didn't like that, so I cut it out. Unfortunately, she couldn't come tonight, but I'm going to show her the tape. But one of the best ways to learn a lot about her is to read and review many biographies, and I think you saw some of them here, and including books for children and autobiographies that she wrote, and hundreds of documents available to review as well. And this particular book, I don't know if you know about when she took a ride from the White House in an evening gown with Amelia. And that's where the recipe for the pink cloud on Angel on Pink Cloud on Angel came from. But, and I just have some documents here, but the internet is unbelievable, and there's so many amazing documents that primary sources about her. So I just want to ask you a question, and I'm always asking myself, what makes a hero? And you might ask yourself, a person who inspires you and through their words and deeds adds direction to your life. And so this is what Eleanor has done for me. And I live by her advice every day. I am, of course, in good company as an admirer of Eleanor Roosevelt. And here she is with her minks on. That's the only thing about her that I don't admire, because I don't wear fur. All right, but in those times, I guess everybody did. And she always had her pearls on, so I have mine on. Just a little bit of an idea of some of the things: journalist, party leader, activist, diplomat, educator, and grandmother, just some of her things. So you very rarely see her without her dog Fala, who was her Scottish Terrier, who she loved, and who was with her at Valkill. She was voted the most admired woman in the world 12 times. And you never saw her without her knitting. I mean, I actually had a videotape of her at the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights Convention, which is, as you know, what I was doing while you're all here tonight to hear about it. She was knitting. So she was never, her needles were not too far away. And so she was so admired. And this was for her 70th birthday. It's her block, who was a great political cartoonist. And it says, "Of course, I know it's Mrs. Roosevelt." And it was made for her 70th birthday. So 3 postage stamps were dedicated to her: 1963, 1984, and 1998. And of course, this one champions her activism in civil rights, American civil rights, for decades and decades. Recently, I don't know if you guys know about this, but recently there was a $20 bill contest. And Rosa Parks won. No, Harriet Tubman won. Probably because everybody knows about Harriet Tubman, but Eleanor should have won. I voted for Eleanor. Okay, so Eleanor was everywhere. She was a woman of many talents, interests, and personas. And I could probably say this all by heart, but I don't want to leave anything out. So I hope you don't mind that I'm using notes. Many titles and nicknames were given to Eleanor. Eleanor Everywhere, the Woman in Perpetual Motion, Eleanor the First Lady of the World, and a person who was a forward thinker, who was not afraid of change in many aspects of her life. So as I said, and this is one of my favorite photos of her. This is her with her suitcase, and this is her leaving for her 4th trip to Israel in 1960 to try to make peace in the Middle East. Before I was, the one unfortunate thing when you're portraying someone is that you can't also show slides. So I basically want to tell you about this political cartoon. And it's the guy standing in front of the White House, and it says, "She'll be home Wednesday evening, ma'am," as far as I understand. So it's like an event when she was home in the White House. She traveled far and wide, always helping others. Here she was in the Galapagos Islands when they were working on the Panama Canal. She was always helping in soup kitchens and service clothing depots. I'm sure everybody knows why she became the socially conscious person who was always serving others, because of her childhood and because of the influence her father used to take her to all these places. And so even though she grew up very wealthy, she learned about giving back. Here she is in India, and I think it was in 1952. And here she is. This is a political cartoon from her going to visit the miners down, I think it was in Virginia. For God's sakes, here comes Mrs. Roosevelt. So Yes, Eleanor was everywhere, and her famous quotes inspired people the world over. I chose a number of quotes that inspired me and helped me learn about Eleanor, and I hope they will do the same for you. So just a few of my favorites. A woman is like a tea bag. How many people have heard this one before? I love this. A woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong she is until she gets into hot water. Do one thing every day that scares you, and that's on the chair. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is mystery, and today is a gift. And I'm telling you, what a gift for me to have, how many people are here, 50? I mean, I am like overwhelmed. I go to library programs all the time, and I decided I love the Lakeville Library. For the last 3.5 years, I've been writing a book, and I've been mostly here annoying the librarians. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. I already told you about them. This one I love, and especially I get the chills when I think about her saying this. I get the chills. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Live by it every day. Many people will walk in and out of your life, but only true friends will leave a footprint on your heart. With the new day comes new strength and new thoughts. I didn't drag all the things that I have an oil lamp that this is on. Also look at that every day. Okay, so I'm going to bore you for a minute about primary sources. I just want to ask you a question. How many people, how would you define a primary source? Okay, so I heard the word document, and that like really, thank you, what's your name? Leah. Leah. You're partially correct, because I don't like when a person says document, because it's not just documents. So, but you were pretty close. So a primary source is a first-hand account created at the time the event happened. We have all these primary sources here. Lots of things going on, the Christmas cards, the photographs, all these different things. So the examples are never-ending. They could be postage stamps, they poems, quilts. Our primary source is a building with a garden attached is a primary source. So many people don't realize, paintings, television and radio broadcasts, even music lyrics and recordings. Those are all primary sources. They're not all documents. All right, so a variety of primary sources of hers having to do with the document of human rights. Her My Day column. Somebody asked a question about My Day. I put some books on the table, and actually, here's the latest up-to-date version of her My Day columns, 1936 to 1962. And there is an entry here for December 9th and December 10th, when she was coming back from Paris. And she continued for decades to write this column. Thousands of homes. People waited for the My Day. How many people read it? Anyone who ever read in My Day column? Okay, so she would tell about her everything that was going on in her life. It was with brightness in her eyes and slight gestures Aunt Eleanor described her work with the United Nations. My aunt believed that nothing real is gained through force. You must study your enemy, understand his motivations, make personal contact, thanks Dante, and then work problems through. So that, there's wonderful quotes from her in that book. Of course, her radio broadcasts, and I'm sure she was on 1 million stations after the Declaration. Here she is at the UN with her headphones, and at the Declaration of Human Rights. Another one of her quotes, it's not fair to ask of others what you are not willing to do yourself. Certainly she lived by that. Here she is addressing the United Nations, and if you have a chance to listen to her speech, I didn't want to, put audio and video into my PowerPoint. It's just too much. But this is a great, great speech. And, of course, discussions, letters. There's letters from President Truman. This is her reporting to him about her time at the UN. And great minds, one of her great quotes, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. Love it. Here she is with the Declaration. And believe it or not, the gift shop was out of the posters. So I couldn't get a poster, and I couldn't blow one up because it just didn't look right. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. I love that one. This is about, this is a quote from 1958 on the 10th anniversary of the Human Rights Declaration. And the four freedoms, as we know Franklin Roosevelt's four freedoms that I referred to as Eleanor: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear, carved into brick. So another primary source. Okay, and this is the speech she made 1958. And of course, the wonderful political cartoons, they are primary sources. So here she is watering the flowers of the Human Rights Commission. And here's her photographs are great primary sources. So here, photographs, if you are people with children or grandchildren or you teach, photographs are the best primary sources to discuss with young children to start out. So here's her committee that I talked about, the people from the different countries. Here they are, all the people from the different countries who she had to be diplomatic. I've learned diplomacy. I don't think I am diplomatic, but I've learned diplomacy as much as I do from Eleanor Roosevelt. It isn't enough to talk about peace. One must believe it, and it isn't enough to believe it. One must work at it. And here's her, her speech addressing the United Nations, another type of primary source. And again, all right, so just a few other quotes. I am who I am today because of choices I made yesterday. I mean, hey, there's a book over here that I love. If I didn't borrow it from the library, I'd steal it. The Quotable Eleanor Roosevelt. You can often change your circumstances by changing your attitude. If someone betrays you once, it's their fault. If they betray you twice, it's your fault. The purpose of life is to live it, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experience. And when I think about this quote, I think about a lot of people that I know who say, Carol, you're so busy. Every time I see you, you're running around. Well, what should I do? Sit there? Okay, so I guess I'm following in Eleanor's footsteps. One's philosophy is not best described expressed in words. It is expressed in the choices one makes. This one is new to me, and I love it. If you leave with one quote, anger is only one letter short of danger. The giving of love is an education in itself, and I love this one about her. And if you think about all the things she's done in her life with civil rights, women's rights, politics, she's going to be criticized anyway. She might as well just do it. When you've decided what you believe, what you feel must be done, you have the courage to stand alone and be counted. And she certainly had that courage. So, and this is actually the long version of do the thing you think you cannot do. Valkill, the home of Eleanor Roosevelt for 17 years before she died, from 1945 to 1962. However, she began coming there before 1920s. While she was at Valkill, she lived there, as I said, full-time on her own for 17 years. While she was there, she did not stop her, her activism, her, commitment to everything that she believed. And here she is with you-know-who. In 1960 at a Democratic convention, Mary McLeod Bethune, a famous educator, championed civil rights, and she worked with her for many, many years. And as I said, in 1960, here she is leaving for Israel, and she said, nothing has ever been achieved by the person who says it can't be done. Eleanor was often heard saying she traveled 4 times to Israel to work on peace in the Middle East, the last time in the last year of her life. And of course, we know who this is, but I'll talk about him in a second. So she actually got a visit from him to get some advice on whether he should run for president. But I'll talk a little bit more about that. And of course, following in her commitment to civil rights in I think it was 37, quit the DAR because they wouldn't let Marian Anderson sing. So today is the oldest you've ever been and the youngest you'll be again. So she was not sitting on that rocking chair. And I didn't know how to fit this into the presentation, so I'm just going to talk about it now. In 1945, when she moved to Valkill, as I said, what did I say about when she got there? She thought she was going to stay there and enjoy herself and live quietly. What did I say happened? She was dissatisfied. She wanted to be out there, so she went as far as doing a margarine commercial for Good Luck Margarine, and there was so much opposition. Oh, how could a woman with her class do a margarine commercial? Well, she loved that. So you can watch it on YouTube, I'm sure. All right, so here we are at Valkill. I invite you to extend your suspension of disbelief for a few more minutes and come with me to Valkill. We're back there again. When you begin to approach Valkill, located the Valkill National Historic Site, you are immediately struck by its grandeur, as well as the simplicity of the property. Wide open spaces, a variety of flora and fauna, a large pond with a flowing stream. It's so quiet. You could almost hear Eleanor Roosevelt walking the half-mile path to the property that she walked with her beloved dog Fala and her loop. She had her walk. So it was at Valkill that Eleanor put her views into practice. Eleanor described the place as where I used to find myself and grow. Do we all have a place like that? If we don't, we need to find one, right? The idea of Valkill is Dutch for the valley stream. It's a Dutch word, the valley stream. So it was in the valley and next to a stream. So the idea emerged in August 1924. Eleanor invited a few of her friends, Nancy Cook and Marion Dickerman, who she met when they asked her to speak at the Women's Democratic National Convention. And I think she was very young. Friendship with oneself is all important because without it, one cannot be friends with anyone else in the world. All right, so here she is with some of her friends, and they used to picnic on the property. It was the Roosevelt property. It was their estate. There was nothing there at the time. The mother-in-law was closing down Springwood, which was like their summer home, so there was no place to go to relax. So Franklin got the idea, suggesting to that the three women build a cottage. He called it a shack, where they would enjoy the place year-round. And here he is enjoying Valkill as well. So by 1925, a small fieldstone house stood on the site, christened Valkill, after the small stream nearby. Marion and Nancy moved into the cottage and made it their home till 1947. Eleanor visited them on weekends and holidays and during the summer. It was the place she could enjoy peace of mind and be away from her demanding and critical mother-in-law, Sarah. In 1926, another building was built. It would be used as a furniture factory, which would be called Valkill Industries. It was here where local farmers would learn to build furniture in the off-season. In 1936, the factory closed, and Eleanor remodeled the factory, building a 20-room house. That's why there's room for you to sleep, with an apartment, and this is the porch. She used to sleep from early spring to late fall. She would sleep out on the porch. Upstairs, there's two bedrooms of hers. She had a regular sleeping bedroom, and then she had her bedroom that was the porch that she would sleep on. And she built an apartment for her secretary, Malvina Thompson, who she called Tommy, who was her secretary from 1929 to 1953. So you could see how wonderful a person she was, knowing that a person would have lasted that long as her secretary. So when Mrs. Roosevelt wasn't traveling, people came to her. Many people came through that door, people who were famous and not so famous. This is the back door, which she called the front door at the back of the house. How many people have one of those? So here's one of the famous people who came through that back door and sat with her in the living room, which I'll show you in a minute, to talk to her about whether he should become president. The back door, it's a little bit sort of blurry, but It's a beautiful wood door, and this is a stained glass that was made by the artist C.J. Connor, who also made stained glass for the Divine Church in New York and West Point. I could not at any age be content to take my place by the fireside and simply look on. Life is meant to be lived. So here you walk in to her, I invited you into, I told you had cocktails in her second living room, which was Tommy's apartment and became her, second living room and her office, where people would have drinks and sit by the fire and listen to the radio. And the way the park ranger described it, that it was like that was the modern day stereo. Here's Eleanor's desk. Any observations? Done? Okay, so Eleanor, a student made this for her, and she didn't have the heart to move it. And how many people's desks tell a lot of things about them? Well, my desk is as messy as Eleanor's was. Of course, they cleaned it up for the, for the tour. But right close by would probably be her suitcase and her hats hanging up. The telephone, probably her extensive, and you're welcome to look at these afterwards, her extensive phone directory, her typewriter, because she was a news person, she was an author. She wrote the column every day, as I told you. Of course, her headphones, because she was doing radio. She always had flowers around. The knitting, those few things you know about her. And never had her teacup too far away. And I wanted to show you, this sort of tells a lot about Eleanor. This is the pattern called Franciscan ware, apple. This was her china. Okay, probably you'd see if you look up her china from the White House, very different. This is what she loved. So here's her Franciscan ware. And some things that maybe people don't know about her, unless you watch the Roosevelt, Ken Burns Roosevelt, she actually, when he became governor of New York, she would not give up, she became First Lady of New York, she would not give up her teaching. She was a history and English history and 19th century literature teacher at a girls' school in Manhattan. She would not give up her teaching. So we have here our apple for teaching, our teacher, bronze teacher. We have our footprints in history aren't made sitting down on her desk. And of course, we have things, women's rights, of course, Rosie the Riveter, and make believe it's a big globe. I wasn't going to schlep that. Her sayings and a few trinkets right now I have on the desk, but of course there's more, from her travels around the world when she had countless gifts. And I asked the other day, where are all her mementos? They're all in the Roosevelt Library in Hyde Park at the Roosevelt Estate. A lot of them aren't out and about, but there are many things there. So, and I told you about the Christmas cards and about her pictures that were all over her living room. Oh yeah, I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So here's a nice something from China, a stamp she'd keep on her desk, an oil lamp from Israel. She had all kinds of people just loved to give her gifts. And photographs and things were also on her desk. And of course, her famous wallet. She was always working on the My Day column, and I love this political cartoon, but it would have made such a scoop if Franklin only told, you'd only tell me, Franklin. Busy at work, you can see the flowers on her desk, and if I can write interesting columns and do an article now and then, my voice would not be silent. So this is the new exhibit, and these are some of the books that she wrote. She wrote 27 books. The reason that fiction is more interesting than any other form of literature to those who really like to study people, it is in fiction the author can really tell the truth without humiliating himself. And here's a few books from her second living room, her whatever you call it, where her office is. All right, so here's the living room. I'm going to put you to work for a second. What do you see here? Tell me about Eleanor by looking at her Remember I asked you why I had different kinds of chairs out, but I want you to take a look at her living room. Can you see it? Can everyone see the picture? All right, what do you see about this living room that could give you a clue about Eleanor?
She has a lot of different kinds of chairs.
Yeah, so why? Quoting Eleanor, my friends come in all sizes, shapes, and colors. So I need to have chairs for all of them. I get the chills when I think about these quotes. So she has the fabric chairs, the wood chairs, the big chairs, the small chairs, for everybody. And over the fireplace, she's got lots of photographs of people who she, came to her home. And the tables, as I said, what would happen is people would mainly take food from the buffet table. When it was Christmas or whatever, she'd have the big table set. But informally, especially in the summer, and what I said to Marge about extra guests, that she couldn't keep a cook because she always brought people in from the street. So here's her, and she had a terrible singing voice, but she loved to play the piano and have people sing around. And this blue chair in the back was her chair, and this is where she actually, right in that corner, talked to John Kennedy, the senator, about becoming president. And in the corner of the living room was the, if you were engaged in conversation and she wanted to talk to you privately, she would bring you over to this little settee in the corner. All right, so here's her table. They have it set. You can see the Franciscan ware. And you can see she loved to serve eggs. I mean, I didn't want to give you guys eggs tonight, but she loved to serve eggs. And in fact, the only thing she knew how to cook was scrambled eggs. And if you came on a night when Marge was off, that's what you got. Christmas cards, as I said, Christmas all year. And she was not a good cook, as I said. Oh, and she has a quote. I don't know if I left my notes already. She has a quote that says that when she became First Lady, Franklin said to her, I don't think that the entertaining and that kind of mundane stuff you will be good at. So you can go check out some of the projects that are being done around the world and the country, and that's how she became so involved, because he didn't want her being a hostess. All right, so here's Marge, and Marge was the last of many cooks who did not last. And Marge was there and her husband until she died. And here you can see her Franciscan ware. And they were planning the menu, but what would happen is they would plan the menu in the beginning of the day, and then, as I said, she would say there's going to be 20 for dinner, and she would bring home an extra 20 people. And so that's one of the reasons she couldn't keep a cook. Here's angels on pink cloud, or pink clouds on angels, so this is actually the way it's supposed to look. Hope you enjoyed it anyway. And this is from the book Eleanor and Amelia Take a Ride, and I think she served it. This was at the White House, though, the night they went up in the air, and Amelia even let her go into the controls. All right, so the upstairs, she had her 2 bedrooms, and she also spent a lot of time outside. She loved to give picnics. So this was the fire pit, and they would play baseball out there and swim, and this was a little child's playhouse because she had, lots of grandchildren, and her gardens, beautiful gardens that she had. And this is one of the side buildings that now is used for exhibits. And as I said, when she wasn't traveling, people came to her. So this is Nehru and Mrs. Nehru. I just want to also say that this is the only National Historic Site that is dedicated to a First Lady. Yeah, among the people she hosted every year for picnics was a delinquent boys' school that they used to come in droves, and she would serve them all hot dogs and read Rudyard Kipling to them. And today, as I said, Valkill is the only national park site dedicated to a First Lady. It's bustling with visitors and the location for workshops and events all year round. And the Eleanor Roosevelt Institute, I don't know what happened with this, the Eleanor Roosevelt Institute is a workshop for young women today that meets every summer to teach young women life skills. One of the things that I found most fascinating about primary sources about her was the contents of her wallet when she died. And I'm going to leave out some information about it so you can take a look. And one of the things that I do with my graduate students at Lesley, they're all going to be teachers, is we do the exercise with her the amount of things that she had in her wallet when she died. Think about how much it tells about you. How many people knew she had a license to carry a pistol? All right, so Earl Miller, who was the bodyguard to Roosevelt, taught her how to shoot. He taught her how to drive a car, of which she was a terrible driver. And in 1946, she had an accident on the Taconic Parkway and knocked out those buck teeth, finally. She was very happy about that. In here, she was a very religious woman. There were religious poems, press club card, because as I said, she was a member of the press. Poems, she loved poems. Her membership on the National Federation of Business and Professional Women, Metropolitan Museum of Art membership, some photographs, her St. Christopher Medal, and of course her United Nations card, and her 1962 Bell System credit card. When she was in Washington, she would come back to New York, and she would stay at, rather than going over to Sarah's house, she would go here. Because this was also the only home that she owned, of her own. Because she, after her parents both died by the time she was 8, so she then went to live with her grandmother, and then her grandmother thought she was too ugly, so she sent her over to England to become a lady, and then she got married, whirlwind romance. And for those of you who don't know, I really want to say this. The reason Franklin married her is because, well, he fell in love with her because she was the only woman he could have an intelligent conversation with. Is that like hopeful, ladies? Okay, so, you know, even though she wasn't that, I don't think she was ugly, but, you know, so this was really her only home that she could call her own. So she did live there from, you know, full time from 1945 to 1962 when she died. But she did live there a lot back and forth. In fact, when they built the stone cottage, she shared a bedroom with the other 2 women, and that's when they worked in the furniture. And she had 6 children. Well, 5 lived, but she had 6 children, and she was back and forth. I don't know. Talk about multitasking. If you'd like to take a look at some of the documents, and especially the contents of her wallet, I'll leave that out. And thank you so much for coming.